Hey y'all, it's me. It's your girl, and you already know. Like, share, and subscribe. How are you, real deal? I am bringing you in here today, tonight, this morning, and noon, wherever it is in your country. Some breaking news that allow you to know and understand what is going on. What went on in Georgia back in 2020 election. A grand jury indicted Donald Trump and his allies in Georgia 2020 election of scamming. Yes. Donald Trump and 18 allies was indicted in Georgia on Monday with scheming to overturn his 2020 election lost in the state, with prosecutors turning to a status normally associated with mobsters to accuse the former president, lawyers, and other top aides in a sweeping criminal conspiracy. Aimed. There are dozens of acts by Trump and his allies to undo his defeat in the battleground state, including hastering Georgia Republicans Secretary of State to find enough votes to keep him powered, pastoring officials with bogus claim of voter fraud and attempting to persuade Georgia lawmakers to ignore the will of voters and appoint a new slate of electoral colleague electors favorable to Trump. It also outlined a scheme to tampering with voting machines in one Georgia county and steal data. In other words, these group of people right here that you're looking at on the screen, and also their names are here, are the 18 allies that, along with Trump, cheated. Yes, they cheated in the vote in Georgia to make him win in 2020 election. Trump and the other defendants charged on the indictment refusal to accept that loss. And they knowingly and willfully joint conspiracy to unlawfully charge the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. Says the indictment ensured Monday night by the official Fulton County District Attorney, Fannie Willis. Other defendants include former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and a Trump administration, Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark, who advanced his effort to undo his election loss in Georgia. Multiple other lawyers who devised legally dubious ideas aimed at overturning the results included John Eastman, Sidney Powell, and Kenneth Chibra were also charged. In other words, Donald Trump and his 18 allies did not win in Georgia. He did not win in Georgia in the election in 2020, and he needed Georgia votes. Sadly to say and listen that you teaches your kids and your husband and your wives not to cheat on tests, voting for queens, voting for president of your school, president, for anything. But you have to still vote just to become who you want to be. It don't work like that in Georgia.
In the final days, trying to push people in Georgia, based on our reporting, to buy into Trump's alleged conspiracy to overturn the election. The third name there is very important. You see John Charles Eastman. John Eastman's a conservative lawyer from California who authored a memo that was actually discovered by Bob Woodward and I when we were reporting on January 6th. And this was a 2-page memo that many have called a blueprint for a coup. And like that Chesborough memo I mentioned a few minutes ago, Eastman's memo also articulated a plan for having people organize as alternate electors in states like Georgia, so that when the election was, even after it was certified by the Electoral College in December 2020, Eastman and others wanted Congress to throw out the votes and have new electors come in from different states so Trump could stay in power. That was ultimately the plan. Mark Meadows, such an important person in this story. He was involved, based on this indictment, in pressuring people in Georgia again and again, working with Trump, who was on the phone with Brad Raffensperger, the election official in Georgia, to try to get something happening, moving in Georgia. Meadows was part of alleged efforts to push the governor, Brian Kemp, to have a special session in Georgia that would make Trump the victor in Georgia, not Biden. Below Meadows' name, you see Ken Chesborough, who authored the memo on the alternate electors. Then you start to see some different names that don't seem that familiar if you don't follow the legal community, but Jeff Clark and Jenna Ellis, a Trump lawyer, Michael Roman, a Trump campaign lawyer. These were many people, and then some of the other names here are those in Georgia who were involved in trying to help Trump. And near the bottom, you also see Sidney Powell. You've heard her name in many stories at CBS News. She was someone who was pushing Trump to seize voting machines and take control of the voting machines in the country. She was focused intently on Georgia in the final days of the administration. We're also joined by Don Samuels, who is a veteran criminal lawyer. He's with us here on the program. Don, thanks for being with us, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can hear you fine.
Don, what's your assessment of this indictment?
This is a massive indictment. This is the type of indictment that we were probably expecting from Jack Smith in the federal case in D.C. As you were just reporting, the number of defendants alleged to be part of this RICO enterprise,
opinion, but let me
which
take it back to the DA, Fannie Williams, the same lady who indicted allegedly
of Georgia's 2020 presidential election.
Indicted.
I'm here with the prosecutors and investigators.
YSL Malley. Let's hear from her.
Who have worked diligently on the investigation of criminal attempts to interfere in the administration of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Today, based on information developed by that investigation, a Fulton County grand jury returned a true bill of indictment, charging 19 individuals with violations of Georgia law arising from a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in this state. The indictment includes 41 felony counts and is 97 pages long. Please remember that everyone charged in this bill of indictment is presumed innocent. Specifically, the indictment brings felony charges against Donald John Trump, Rudolph William Louis Giuliani, John Charles Eastman, Mark Randall Meadows, John Cheeseborough, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Lynn Ellis, Ray Stallings Smith III, Robert David Cheeley, Michael A. Roman, David James Schaefer, Sean Micah Tresher Steele, Stephen Cliffgard Lee, Harrison William Prescott Floyd, Travion C. Cootie, Sydney Catherine Powell, Kathleen Austin Latham, Scott Graham Hall, and Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty Hayes. Every individual charged in the indictment is charged with one count of violating Georgia's Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act through participation in a criminal enterprise in Fulton County, Georgia, and elsewhere to accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office beginning on January 20th, 21. Specifically, the participants in association took various actions in Georgia and elsewhere to block the counting of the votes of the presidential electors who were certified as the winners of Georgia's 2020 general election. As you examine the indictment, you will see acts that are identified as overt acts and those that are identified as predicate acts, sometimes called acts of racketeering activity. Overt acts are not necessarily crimes under Georgia law in isolation, but are alleged to be acts taken in furtherance of the conspiracy. Many occurred in Georgia, and some occurred in other jurisdictions and are included because the grand jury believes they were part of the illegal effort to overturn the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. The acts identified as predicate acts or acts of racketeering activity are crimes that are alleged to have been committed in furtherance of the criminal enterprise. Acts of racketeering activity are also charged as separate counts in the indictment against those who are alleged to have committed them. All elections in our nation are administered by these states, which are given the responsibility of ensuring a fair process and an accurate counting of the votes. That includes elections for presidential electors, Congress, state officials, and local offices. The state's role in this process is essential to the functioning of our democracy. Georgia, like every state, has laws that allow those who believe that results of an election are wrong, whether because of intentional wrongdoing or unintentional error, to challenge those results in our state courts. The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result. Subsequent to the indictment, as is the normal process in Georgia law, the grand jury issued arrest warrants for those who are charged. I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August, 2023. I remind everyone here that an indictment is only a series of allegations based on a grand jury's determination of probable cause to support the charges. It is now the duty of my office to prove these charges in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. I would like to take a moment to thank the Superior Court Clerk, Shay Alexander, and her staff for staying late and making sure that this indictment was processed. I would also like to thank the men and women of Sheriff Labatt's office for keeping the courthouse open, but most importantly, for keeping us safe over the weeks and months that have led up to this indictment, and for what I know they will continue to do to keep us safe. We also want to thank the Atlanta Police Department and other law enforcement partners who have worked with the sheriff to keep us safe. I will now take a very limited number of questions prior.
Okay. In other words, real deal. This is what's going to happen. The former president has been charged with 4 counts: conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to obstruct the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. Conspiracy to impede the January 6th congressional processing. A conspiracy against the right to vote and to have that vote counted. And obstruction of the certification of the electoral votes. Trump also faces charges in a separate case brought by the special counsel. He has been accused of mishandling the nation's secrecies since leaving the White House. Trump was charged by Manhattan District Attorney Ivan Bragg earlier this year in connection with hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. The former president also could still be indicted in Georgia, where a prosecutor is investigating the effort to overturn the election there. Trump has denied wrongdoing in all the cases. This is your girl, the real deal, Lanita Gill, and all this says is he did not win in Georgia in 2022, 2020 election. I'm out.